Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of SPS Spotlight. I'm your host, Azal Kavan, Chief Communications Officer for Springfield Public Schools, and my guest today is Mr. Matthew Grimes. Matthew works in the Human Resources Department for Springfield Public Schools, and his job is to recruit teachers and educators into our district. And since he's had that position, Matt has focused quite a bit on increasing the diversity pool of educators here in Springfield Public Schools. It's part of the overarching mission and vision for Springfield Public Schools to have a teacher pool that better reflects the students that are sitting in the classrooms in front of the teachers every day. So Matthew has been working on that for quite some time now. So Matthew, thank you for joining us today and talking with us a little bit about what we're doing as a district to help bring highly qualified teachers into our district who may reflect the students that they're serving.
Yes, thanks, Azal. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So Matthew, first of all, is this unique to Springfield Public Schools, this issue of, wanting to have more teachers of color, more diverse teachers in our schools?
It's not, Azal. It's actually a national crisis, they're calling it, about the lack of racial diversity amongst our educator population. If we look on a national scale, about 80% of our teachers identify as white, whereas almost 50% of our students in America's schools identify as students of color, Black or Latinx. And so there's a huge disconnect. And a lot of the research, Azal, shows that when students of color have teachers of color that look like them and that understand their backgrounds, everybody benefits. Right. So like many other districts, we're just trying to figure out how can we provide the best supports for our students so that they see teachers who look like them, but also have the opportunity to learn from individuals who understand their unique backgrounds and needs.
That was a question that I was going to ask you. What difference does the race, the color, or the creed of the teacher standing in front of you make if their job is to teach you? But what I'm hearing from you is that it's a sense of connection that teachers and students have, and understanding for the culture and for other, other non-tangible things that may even just open the student up to a greater level of comfort and familiarity so that they can learn better.
Yeah, it's certainly that level of connectivity, right? But the field of education and the world of teaching has changed drastically over several years. And one thing that we really focus on here in Springfield is making sure that our students have strong relationships with our teachers, right? So having a teacher that looks like a student, and again, that understands their backgrounds, just helps students form better relationships. And if we look, again, nationally at data and statistics, oftentimes when students of color have educators of color, we see greater test scores, we see less suspension rates, we see more students of color being promoted into honors programs and taking advanced courses for credits at the high school level. And so it's not just a matter of having someone that looks like them, it's all of those intangibles that come with it in our current state of education in this world.
So if it's a national crisis, that must mean that there isn't a great pool of teachers of color for the entire nation to draw from. So where does that leave Springfield? What are we doing to have access to those teachers who may be available and to let them know that we're here?
Yeah, and that's often a big misconception that we hear, Azal. There actually are many Black and Brown, Hispanic, Latinx, African-American, Black teachers out there. It's just how do we create the conditions within our school district to make sure that we're creating an environment for them to thrive. Here in Springfield, we look to our community. We look to our parents, we look to our para-educators, we look to our substitute teachers, and we look to our students. We look at individuals who are already reflective of the community, and we try to look for ways to support them on their journey to becoming a licensed educator. So let me give a few examples. I mentioned earlier our para-educators, right? Paraprofessionals work in our school buildings every day. They're constantly engaging with our students. Our students know and see them. And many of our paraprofessionals were born and raised right here in Springfield and graduated from a Springfield public school. So we said over the past few years, well, what if we created a strategic pipeline to the education profession? So if someone is working in our district and identifies as a person of color or someone in the BIPOC community here in Springfield, we have a number of pathways and opportunities to help support them to go back to school, to help them get a reduced tuition at some of our partner colleges and universities, to make sure they have mentors, to make sure that they have support when they do have to sit for those teacher tests and exams, because we know the value of what's called growing our own. In addition to our paraprofessionals, our students, right, the majority of whom are Black and brown. We have a wonderful partnership with Westfield State, the Reach to Teach program. Whereas any graduating senior who meets the eligibility requirements for Westfield State can be admitted into this program. They go to Westfield State, they get the full college experience, they're getting support and mentorship along the way. And after 4 years, when they graduate, we actually hire them back. We guarantee them as a job to come back and work for our students here in Springfield. So those are just a few examples of the Grow Your Own programs that we have to help diversify and tap into our wonderful diverse community here in Springfield.
So what I'm hearing you say is we're not going all over, we're not necessarily looking outside of our own community for teachers of color. We're trying to tap into the wonderful resources that we have right here in our pool already as paraprofessionals and even as students who can go through the process and become teachers here in the district.
You're correct. And it's certainly a strategy that we've seen a lot of success in the past few years when it comes to hiring educators, right? This year, for the first time in Springfield's history, half of our newly hired teachers and guidance counselors identified as people of color, right?
Half of our new hires?
Half of our new hires, many of whom were previously working as paraprofessionals or substitutes, right? So we're providing that back end support so they feel supported and mentored and coached to be able to step into that role of a classroom teacher and to best support our students.
So are you finding that as teachers retire because they come of age and they've provided their service to the district for so many years and then they're retiring, that we tend to now fill those positions with more diverse teachers?
That's certainly the goal. And yeah, the trends over the past few years, certainly since around 2012, when Superintendent Warwick took the helm of our district, that's certainly what we've been seeing. We've been seeing an upward trend in the number of Black and brown, diverse, racially diverse educators who are in front of our students.
So if there's somebody out there who's a paraprofessional, or, you mentioned the Reach to Teach program, they're a student who wants to learn more, how do they get this information?
Yeah, I always tell people the best place to go is to our website, particularly the talent acquisition page on our website.
Talent acquisition?
Talent acquisition, yeah. It's on the main page. It's easy to access. And certainly all of this information is here. I also encourage folks to give us a call, right? Call the Human Resources Department, ask to speak with a recruiter, ask to speak to someone, because we can go over in detail the different programs that we have available and really tailor a course of action that's going to meet the needs of folks, right? We want to make sure that our efforts are differentiated and really meeting the needs. We know that many of our paraprofessionals are also working members and oftentimes providers for their families, right? So sometimes going to a traditional higher education program or college doesn't make the most sense for them. So we can guide them into the programs that actually have classes that meet on the weekends or in the evenings, or hybrid classes. Even before the pandemic, we've had paraprofessionals who were taking a night class, right? So we want to make sure that we're connecting them based on their situations to the best programs that we have partnerships with in order to make sure that they can be successful.
And I guess the only thing, the most important factor for teaching is to be a qualified teacher. So what is our quality controls? How are we making sure that, we're working on, we also have highly qualified teachers?
Sure, Zell. So we talked earlier about the critical shortage of diverse educators in the United States. There's also a critical shortage of certain subject areas, right? What we call here in Springfield are critical needs areas. These are positions like math teachers and science teachers and special education teachers who are really hard to find and to get into the district, right? And so we think about highly qualified. We are intentionally targeting some of these teaching professions in some of these fields to make sure that we're developing from within, right? So if you want to become a special education teacher here in Springfield, not only will we help you pass the test and have the supports needed, but we also have some in-district programs to help you get licensed, to help you get the certifications and the requirements you need to be an effective teacher. We're also really cognizant and intentional about making sure that we're developing So we work in partnership with the Office of Instruction to make sure that we're providing learning opportunities for our teachers throughout the school year so that they can improve their practice as well, right? And so when we think about highly qualified teachers, it's not about just finding teachers, it's how do we keep them, how do we retain them, how do we best support them and grow them so that they're following the recent trends. I'll give a really specific example. When we did transition to remote learning, we were able to tap into many of our teachers who we currently have to lead trainings, to lead sessions on how to navigate a virtual environment. What are some innovative and engaging lesson plans that you can share with others, right? And that all falls into the bucket of being highly qualified. It's not just finding highly qualified, it's developing them as well.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Matthew, thank you for your time today. I know you've been working so hard, and not only you, but you work with others, and there's been a lot of support from across the district for this initiative that we are undertaking, which is to increase the diversity of the teachers within our classrooms. So, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope that this information has been helpful and informative to our families and our community out there in Springfield. And again, this is SPS Spotlight. I'm your host, Azel Kavan, and please stay tuned to this channel for more updates in the future.